The World Shaper's Awakening. Chapter 1. The Dream. Netto Ran'ningu woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding as if it might burst from his chest. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the remnants of the nightmare still clinging to him like cobwebs. The dream had felt so real, more vivid than any he had ever experienced. He could still feel the cold, dark presence that had loomed over him, whispering ominous threats in a language he didn't understand. His small room was dimly lit by the early morning light filtering through the thin curtains. Posters of various anime characters and a few motivational quotes covered the walls, a stark contrast to the foreboding atmosphere of his dream. Netto glanced at his clock. It was 6:30 a.m., time to get ready for school. Pushing aside the tangled sheets, Netto swung his legs over the side of the bed and rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the lingering unease. He wondered if the dream meant something or if it was just a manifestation of his anxieties. Life hadn't been easy lately, and the pressure from school and home weighed heavily on him. Netto's room was a reflection of his life, cluttered and chaotic. His desk was piled high with textbooks and notebooks, a testament to the relentless demands of high school. As he moved to the bathroom, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. His dark hair was a disheveled mess, and his eyes looked tired and haunted. He splashed cold water on his face, hoping to wash away the remnants of the nightmare. Downstairs, the smell of toast and eggs greeted him. His mother, Sachi, was bustling around the kitchen, her usual morning routine in full swing. She glanced up as he entered, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Good morning, Netto. Sleep well?" she asked, though her eyes searched his face with concern. "Not really," Netto replied, grabbing a piece of toast. "Just a weird dream." Sachi frowned but didn't press further. She knew better than to pry too much, especially when Netto was already dealing with so much. He quickly ate his breakfast, the familiar routine providing a small comfort. Despite the warmth of his home, an undercurrent of tension always seemed to linger, a result of the unspoken struggles that shadowed their lives. Netto's father had left them a few years ago, and since then it had just been him and his mother. They got by, but it wasn't easy. The weight of responsibility had fallen heavily on Netto, forcing him to grow up faster than most kids his age. Balancing school, part-time jobs, and helping his mother was a constant juggling act. The bus ride to school was uneventful, with the usual mix of chatter and laughter among the other students. Netto kept to himself, headphones in place, music providing a temporary escape from his thoughts. His school, Takamori High, was a large, imposing building that seemed to loom over the town like a silent sentinel. As he entered, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, a lingering sense of unease that had followed him from his dream. The first few classes of the day passed in a blur, his mind drifting back to the nightmare. He found it hard to concentrate, the teachers' voices blending into a monotonous drone. It wasn't until lunch that Netto finally felt a semblance of normalcy. He met up with his best friend, Kaito, at their usual spot under a large cherry blossom tree in the school courtyard. Kaito was a stark contrast to Netto, always cheerful and full of energy. He greeted Netto with a wide grin and a hearty slap on the back. "Hey, Netto. You look like you saw a ghost," Kaito said, laughing. "Rough night." "You could say that," Netto replied, sitting down and unwrapping his bento. "Had a weird dream. Felt too real." Kaito raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of dream?" Netto hesitated, not sure how to describe it. "It was dark, cold. There was this presence. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. It was whispering something, but I couldn't understand the words." Kaito's expression grew serious. "Sounds creepy. Maybe it's just stress. You've got a lot on your plate." "Yeah, maybe," Netto agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just stress. As the day wore on, Netto's sense of unease only grew. During his afternoon history class, he found himself staring out the window, lost in thought. The teacher's voice faded into the background as he replayed the dream over and over in his mind, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't until the final bell rang that Netto snapped back to reality. He gathered his things and headed for the bus stop, the day's events weighing heavily on him. The ride home was a blur, the world outside the bus window passing by in a haze. When Netto finally got home, he found a letter waiting for him on the kitchen table. It was addressed to him, but there was no return address. Curiosity piqued. He tore it open and read the contents. The letter was brief, but its message was clear. Meet me at the old library tonight at midnight. Come alone. Netto's heart raced as he reread the letter. Who had sent it? And why? The old library was a decrepit building on the outskirts of town, abandoned for years. He had always found it eerie, a place where shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. He couldn't ignore the feeling that the letter was connected to his dream. The same sense of foreboding that had haunted him all day now loomed over him like a dark cloud. Despite his better judgment, Netto knew he had to go. He had to find out what was happening, even if it meant facing his fears head-on. As the hours ticked by, Netto's anxiety grew. He couldn't focus on his homework, his mind racing with possibilities. What if it was a trap? What if the presence from his dream was waiting for him? But the need for answers outweighed his fear. At 11:30 p.m., Netto slipped out of the house, careful not to wake his mother. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual sounds of the town muted under the blanket of night. The journey to the old library felt longer than usual, each step echoing in the silence. When he arrived, the library stood like a forgotten monument, its windows dark and its doors creaking in the wind. Netto took a deep breath and pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old books. He pulled out his flashlight and made his way through the shadowy aisles, the beam cutting through the darkness. "Hello," Netto called out, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment there was no response. Then a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a girl about his age, with long black hair and piercing blue eyes. She looked familiar, but Netto couldn't place her. "You got my letter," she said, her voice steady and calm. Netto nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who are you?" "My name is Yume," she replied. "I've been watching you, Netto. There's something you need to know, something that connects us. Your dream was just the beginning." Netto's mind raced with questions, but before he could ask them, Yume stepped closer, her expression serious. "There's a darkness coming, Netto. A darkness that only we can stop." Netto's breath caught in his throat. This was more than he had bargained for, but deep down he knew she was right. The nightmare, the letter, the eerie feeling that had haunted him all day. It was all connected. As Yume began to explain, Netto listened intently, realizing that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The dream had been a warning, and now it was up to him and Yume to face the darkness together. The night stretched on as they talked, the old library bearing witness to the beginning of a journey that would test their courage and determination. For Netto, the dream had been just the start, a harbinger of the challenges to come. And as he walked home in the early hours of the morning, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope amidst the fear. Whatever lay ahead, he wouldn't face it alone.